Welcome to the Up in Your Family Business podcast, where we dive into the heart of family business with intimate interviews, expert insights, inspirational stories, valuable resources, and practical tips to help grow your family business. Hi, I am Todd Rimer, the co-owner of Element 212, and I am the host of this podcast, Up in Your Family Business. Thank you for listening to and or watching this episode. The goal and purpose of this podcast, with the help of our guests, are to help family business leaders gain insights, solve problems, be inspired, seize opportunity, and achieve multi-generational prosperity. No pressure on you guys, right? No pressure. So I want to thank our guests for being here. So Ashley, Regal, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Tracy Fields, thank you.
Very excited.
We're going to get into your bios here in just a minute. Before we do that, let's get a little personal here. So you guys are brother and sister.
We are.
Correct.
Okay. Tracy, you told me you guys are 3 years apart.
Correct.
I'm going to assume you're younger.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Great answer.
That's the right answer, right?
Either way, but yes.
It's okay. But you are 3 years younger?
Correct.
Oh, okay. That's what I figured. Okay. So what was it? Is your relationship today any different than it was when you guys were younger? Were you guys super close when you were younger?
Yeah, I think we were a little bit meaner to each other back then.
Mm-hmm.
We were pretty rough and tumble. We were latchkey kids. So
were you?
Oh yeah,
For sure.
Yeah. So we, in front of the TV, just going crazy, but
A lot of traipsing around the neighborhood, me and him and his friends. So
Okay.
kind of one of the boys
Okay.
yeah.
with him.
So what was that like 3 years apart? So you're 3 years apart, your brother, sister. Were you guys close when you were little, or
Yeah. I mean.
typical big brother?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Protecting
we
her,
had a pretty
looking
normal,
after her?
healthy, pretty normal, healthy, like sibling relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So you guys, Tracy, when I was talking to you the other day, you guys had different career paths.
Very, very different.
Okay. So how is it that you guys end up here working at the same place?
I think kind of serendipitously, really. I left home and joined the military and had a pretty long career. Ended up retiring after 21 years. But I think what's interesting and part of this story, right, is in the latter parts of my career, as part of the Indiana Army National Guard, which means like a reservist, right? So I was being a soldier part-time, and I was working in corporate America part-time. And what happened was I was able to gain all this really interesting, unique experience because somebody very smartly within the Indiana National Guard said, you have this skill set on the civilian side that we can leverage on the military side. And so I started doing almost very like corporate consulting style work for the military while I was doing corporate consulting work and project management and stuff like that in the corporate side. And so I had all this really weird, and I got a wide breadth of experiences at a lot of different scales, right? Fortune 500 companies, the U.S. government, doing all these different things, right? And so I was able to gain I got to see businesses and the military, and I got to see all the things they were doing right and all the things they were doing wrong. And I think what was happening is just, in the back of my mind, I kind of had this running list, right? And then fast forward, and I actually can kind of tell you how, we kind of got to where we're at, but there was this kind of merging of experiences that has worked out quite well, really.
What'd you go to school for?
Believe it or not, I was a general studies degree.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I was in the military, and I knew I was going back to the military, so it was just like I need to get out of here as fast as possible. So it was just a check the box for me.
Well, at Total Body Wellness, you also have a very general title.
That's also true. Yeah. Yes.
You do a little bit about everything. I know you have a title. He does a lot of stuff. He does a lot.
Yeah, and so it is interesting how it all came together. And so, speaking of family relationships, is as this came to be, where I recognized opening this clinic and owning a business was a reality, and the lease was signed, and this open date was there, and it was kind of that panic and truly like a little sister, big brother call, like, I need your help. I know your experience. I have 4 weeks to do this. and I'm feeling really overwhelmed, and I don't know how I'm going to execute this. And he was able to kind of drop. Were you in Florida at the time?
No,
Not yet. Okay. But what he did was, he's like, all right, let me prepare some things, and came into our empty building that was not ready yet, and we had 3 staff members, and he spent a day. It was like an 8-hour day where we went through, and he had this Post-it note thing, and we went through, and he said, these are all, like, let's go through this. Let's talk about what needs to be done.
You mapped it out?
He mapped it out, and he stayed on top of it. And it was all just a big brother helping his little sister. There was no partnership. There was no financial investment. It was, hey, like, this is what, if you're going to do this, this is the order. And he really helped map that out and helped stay accountable. And and then he left it. It wasn't like, okay, let me call this company for you. There was no other real involvement, but very big picture. And I always say, like, we would not have opened our doors on time if he hadn't came and done his formal training boot camp with us. And so that was kind of the first step to how this partnership.
Corporate boot camp.
100%, because while I am very well educated in the medical side of what I do, I have absolutely zero business experience. And, and so that was a very kind of natural first step, and it was a very kind of slow, organic process to get to where we are today in a more formal relationship when it comes to the business. But that's how it started. That's where that first seed was planted, was Big Brother, I need your help.
That's pretty cool. What year was that?
That was 2020. So
2020.
Yeah, we opened our doors September 2020, right in the heart of chaos.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're not necessarily an entrepreneur. You are someone passionate about what you do, and you decided to do a business so you can create change.
100%.
And make a difference. Yeah.
Correct.
How much of that do you think was driven out of your lack of satisfaction with your employer at the time?
I would say 100%. I kind of came to a crossroads. I know that where my passions are and where my gifts and talents are is I'm very empathetic, I'm very relational, and I love science. And so I think that makes me a natural medical provider. In some sense, I was always going to do medicine, right? Those are my 2 best gifts that I was given. And when it came to a point where I was very unhappy where I was, I had a conversation with my husband. I said, I'm either retiring. I'm not going back to working in a hospital and working nights and weekends. I have little kids at home.
You're going to retire? Oh, okay. You have little kids at home.
We were fortunate that I could be a quote-unquote stay-at-home mom, or I'm going to have to open up my own business. I can't do this again. And he knows me and knows that that's absolutely not enough. I wouldn't be happy. I can't be at home. I have gifts to give. I have a brain to share and education to share. And so he was very supportive and said, I think you can do it. And I said, okay, let's go. You
don't need to name the company, but give me a little general overview of where you were working. What was it that was dysfunctional or not? What didn't you like about it?
Sure. And what the problem was is I came from historically working for big corporations like IU Health and Community Health, which were great, but have its constrictions when it comes to just rules and regulations, especially with just your time, to be honest, just like any corporation. And so I left that for a small, individually owned office and was able to get more experience in more of the functional side, integrative side, which was very valuable. But what did not sit right with me was the pendulum swung so far in the other direction when it came to the way that it was ran. Just it didn't align with my values when it came to certain things. And I don't want to get into it too much.
No, that's okay.
But I knew that if that just did not feel sustainable to me, and it didn't sit right with me. And I said, if I didn't work this hard for, if this ship was going down, I'm not going down with it. I don't feel at the end of the day I can sleep right with my name on that list of operations. Okay. And so it was really disappointing because I finally felt a passion for what I was doing in medicine and getting these patients and building these relationships. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I've just started seeing all of these patients. What am I going to do? Leave them and say, sorry, I can't see you anymore. And so it was definitely a crossroads where I had to make that decision to continue to see these patients and hope they follow me, or just leave it, just wipe my hands clean and leave it completely.
So what made you get into nursing in the first place?
That's a great question. I think, again, like I said, I always was when the gifted and talented classes were always very science-based and black and white. But it was actually, our mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was a teenager, senior in high school. And seeing that relationship between really where my passions like was a mid-level provider, which we'd call like a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant, and how much impact they can have on a patient, because sometimes physicians and MDs can feel so far away, but it's really that role of the nurse practitioner that is truly making a difference day to day, especially with cancer patients, and helping them navigate, and watching that relationship with our own mother's nurse practitioner and seeing their ability to have so much autonomy in how they practiced, but that extra level of care that they have the time to give was I just knew. So it was nice because unlike his long journey to where he got to be, I knew right away I was going to go to college. I was going to be a nurse. I was at the time in Indiana, you had to have an active license bedside nurse for 2 years, and then apply to nurse practitioner school, get my graduate degree, and I wanted to be in oncology, and I was going to be an oncology nurse practitioner, and that's exactly what I did. In the little amount of time that I did it, I executed it, and I worked as an oncology nurse practitioner for several years, and it was very, very satisfying. And I thought, okay, I did it. I did exactly what I wanted to do. And it just over time, as a consumer of health and as an aging person who experiences life's up and downs, I found quickly that there was this just missing hole of healthcare that was frustrating. And so let's say I'm seeing a lot of patients who have finished chemo, let's say they're in remission and they're coming to me, they're so tired, they're depressed, they don't have any libido, they can't sleep, they're anxious. Right. I'm like, oh, no, I don't know, go see your primary care. I'm not given the tools to help you with this.
I see.
I can write you a prescription for an antidepressant, and that's about it.
And you have no impact on their preventative measures at all?
Not really, no. And so after about 6 years of doing that, it felt like I knew there was more I could be doing. I could do more, and I was learning more, but I can't, again, execute that in that position that I was in the facility that I was in. And so that's why I eventually moved away from that. But it was invaluable to that experience and that education along that way in that traditional setting in conventional medicine was foundational to how I practice today. So I would never have traded that experience for the world.
So how did you, so you don't have a nursing background, you don't have a medical background.
No.
Other than the shared love for your mom. I mean, how in the world did you end up at Total Body Wellness?
So,
did you have a passion for what they're doing and that drew you in?
So, absolutely. Like, I love my sister, and I think...
That's good, he loves you.
Yeah, and I think
good to know.
that, and being just, kind of sitting, kind of idly watching her have this booming business, right? And I think, one of the things that she very smartly observed was like, hey, like, I'm starting to get out in front of my skis a little bit here, from on the business side. Because, there's a lot of it, right? There's the technology, right? There's the hardware, there's the software, there's, the marketing. There's just 8,000 bits of information.
All the processes and systems.
Process, systems, people, right? And keep in mind, not only is she a business owner, but she also has a full caseload of patients she's seeing every day. So at some point, you can stay a small business, right? You can like a true mom and pop shop, or you can make the strategic decision to like become something bigger and better. And I remember this conversation. We sat down and I said, I can, we're in kind of these exploratory conversations, like how could this possibly work? And I said, what is it you want to be when you grow up? Like we have to define that now. We have goals.
You were so certain when you were younger, right?
Right. But the question was like, what's the business look like in 2035?
Right.
And then we're going to work backwards from that. And it was, okay, then that's the plan. And here's how you can maintain a caseload. Here's how you still be essentially a part-time business owner. And as we start to look at our strategic plan that goes out, seriously, it's like a formal plan is 10 years right now. Like, how are we going to achieve this? And there's and then there's also keeping this business that we have that is literally growing every day. One of the things I say is like, just if, from a business perspective, EBITDA has doubled year over year since we opened. Like,
That's awesome.
It's awesome. But that comes with its own set of, growth comes with its own set of problems, right? So every little problem is starting to get slightly larger and slightly larger. And now as we look into the future to start looking at second, third locations, those little problems are very quickly going to become, could be theoretically business enders, right?
It's time to pull out the Post-it notes, Tracy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're everywhere.
Exactly.
They are everywhere.
We were fortunate enough to be successful day one, right?
That's cool.
And I think being in a town like Brownsburg, having personal relationships, it was a very much grassroots operation. Day one, our books were full. And again, we had my business partner and I, we had 3 employees. And again, just like you were saying, because we were so successful, which is great, meant more patients in. That means more phone calls in. That means more charts we have to be mindful of. That means more communication we're responsible for, which means more employees that we're responsible for. So what worked for 3 employees did not transfer well to 20 employees. And so we kind of grew faster than what we were like our foundational structure was set up for. And that's where that really came to the point where it was like a formal decision that said, we need help. We are not structurally built to handle the volume of business that we're doing, the volume of employees that we are responsible for. And so again, when you don't have formal education and formal training on how to do that, going off of like feel and gut instinct was fine for a little bit, but that was not sustainable. And I recognize that. And something that I feel like we have done from the beginning is really leaned on those who are experts at what they do. And so the first thing we did before we even had an LLC was got an accountant, right? And we are leaning on the people who are experts in their area and helping them or counting on them to help us and help guide us. And so we recognize that. But yeah, so it came to a point where this isn't just like I can call you for advice, which was probably the first full year and a half, almost 2 years of business was just, hey, what do you think to this? And always very, very open to just his time and talents and just giving me advice. But it got to a point where it was a full-time job, or at least a part-time job at the beginning where I'm like, okay, this is, if you're going to help me execute this isn't working to just like a random phone call here and there.
The call for help was, they started to be, once a day or twice a day. And again, and so our relationship, our work relationship, it's really been awesome because I think it's built on trust, right? And my only job is to see her succeed, right? And that's the mark that I under. Cool. As this business has grown, and what I have, kind of jokingly said is, and I think this happens to a lot of small businesses, right? Is you graduate, like what I call it, graduating into, like we're in our sophomore year now.
Okay.
Year, like term loosely, right?
I know what you mean.
But,
sophomore period.
Yeah, sophomore period, and again, and so as she was talking about the little things that, and again, I think about starting any small business, right? And even our, how we became friends, right? Was we had a website. It was a website and it did website things, but it was very, very limited onto what it could ever be and could ever do, right? And so but that's the thing is that was what worked in day one, right? Now as we're in our sophomore kind of year, we're looking at a website that needs to be bigger. It needs to be better. It needs to have online retail. It needs to have cross integration into things like email marketing and shipping and do all these other whiz bang things. But that does not apply to a true startup, right?
And that's just the website.
Dude, this is one of things. So literally, I was jokingly, like when we look at our tech, right? Like our tech, we've upgraded our charting system. Again, in the desire to want to be in compliance with HIPAA, there's a lot of things we had to do. We literally gutted our entire tech system for was just literally brand new, and now we're built on what I would say like an enterprise level system, to make sure that we're keeping our patients safe. But again, that's what you do when you are in the sophomore year. So you kind of have to go back and relook at every single thing, every decision that you've made, and decide does this work for us now in our sophomore period, right? And as we have, and what my kind of local big, my most recent goal is like, all right, so when we photocopy this into a second or a third location, right? Like, it has to be right now, right? And then maybe, and then we'll graduate again, and all we'll have to go through the same process over. But I think that's where, when I look at businesses, small businesses, right, and people that I know own businesses, I always use this analogy, like, you can be a really good mechanic. It doesn't mean you know anything about business, right? People need your services, but getting it to them in a way that is sustainable, legal, moral, and ethical, it requires a lot more. And that, I think, is really the true big challenge of small businesses, and that's the difference of a business that stays a small business, that fails, and the one that thrives.
And I want to speak into the fact that is very time consuming. So when you look,
energy consuming as well.
And so when you look at, like, again, even our own father, my dad, has asked me, explain again what your brother is doing. Like, I don't understand.
My parents, I still don't think my parents understand what I do, even though I'm not sure.
And how does that fit into total body wellness? I don't understand. And I said, okay, here's a great example. So again, we outgrew our EMR, which is our electronic medical record, right? It wasn't serving us anymore with the growth that we had.
Did you tell that to your dad? Because he would have been like, huh?
Yes. And I said, so here's an example of why we need someone like Tracy on board. His job then, so while I'm seeing patients every 30 minutes, he is doing the research. He's having these exploration calls like he did with you at the website, right? On these companies. He's understanding what exact services are you able to provide. He is asking costs. He's negotiating costs. He's negotiating terms. And then after he's done all of this research, whether it's on one company, 6 companies.
You got to make a decision.
He comes to me and says, okay, here's option A. Here's the requirements, and here's option B. That took 2 weeks of 40 hours a week of prep work that he was able to do, but only 1 hour of my time on an admin day for him to say, here's your options.
It's really cool.
And so that is such a luxury, right? Because for me to have tried to fit that in between calls or late at night, and again, my passions, while they are for my business, are also for my family. So when I go home, I don't want to leave clinic and then get right onto my computer. I want to be home and be present. And that's a boundary that I've set and that I've really stuck with. And so having that is honestly invaluable. And so I think it's a good example of this strategic business, director, when you say, like, his title is very broad, which is very true. But again, he was the one that reached out to you, right, for this website. He had that exploration call. I didn't even know you existed, your company, until he brought bullet points.
I'm hurt that my reputation didn't precede me.
And so he said, listen, and I trust him. And he's like, I've done all the research. Here's what I think you should go with was this company, and here's why. Here's your good, better, and best options. And here's why I'm going to champion you to consider your best option, but it's not my decision, and which I respect. He's very respectful of understanding, like, he's not making the decisions, but he's certainly going to do the research. He's going to do he's going to know what questions to ask you. I'm not going to know what questions to ask you. I don't understand technology in that sense. I don't understand business relationships.
You don't want to.
And I don't care to.
Don't do it.
So yeah, it really, I think, helps you get a good picture of how you marriage, like, what does that mean to have this?
Yeah, that's really neat.
Operations director, strategic. I think officially strategic director.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why you hired an accountant. I'm sure Tracy can handle that. What the heck? All right, this is great. I feel like we can do a whole podcast episode just on operational progress and developments. I mean, this is crazy. This is kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, it is, and like I said, and I think what we can kind of close the topic out with is something I said earlier. It's like, I think that's what makes the difference, right? People say, you got to invest into the business, and the first thing they're ready to do is to get a bigger space or hire more staff, and or carry a new product line, right? That's when they say invest in the business. That's what they're thinking. But instead of stopping and saying, what about if we invest into the idea of the business, right? Like, what does that mean, right? Like, what does it mean to add a new service, right? I'll literally spend a day calculating and looking at Like, who else is doing it? Why are they doing it? What's the margin? What's the potential for sale? How are we going to market it? Right? And so I'll spend a day because they come to me with like, hey, we want to add this service. And I'll do that level of analysis. And guess what? I understand it's not free. I get it. But guess what? What you paid me to tell you no is going to save you tens of thousands of dollars over the next 5 years. So invest in the idea of your business, not into new stuff, right? Invest into the strategy of your business. Okay. That would be how I'd kind of close that out.
Okay. That's very cool. All right. Now, here's a smart guy, I tell you. All right. So let's transition. I think you guys covered your bio pretty well. I do want to point out that was pretty cool. You work for Amazon, Purdue, Virgin Voyages, City of Indianapolis. That's a lot of cool places.
I don't want to say work for them, but did work with them.
Did work with them as a consultant?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let me share in context so we can transition into the healthcare conversation. Let me share with the listeners what Total Body Wellness is. I know you guys are officially Total Body Wellness Brownsburg, but I know that you guys are eventually going to drop the Brownsburg because of your growth, correct? So forgive me if is it okay for me to call it Total Body Wellness instead of Total Body Wellness Brownsburg?
Perfect.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, so Total Body Wellness offers an innovative, patient-centered approach to healthcare, emphasizing preventative care and personalized medicine to optimize wellness from the inside out. Founded in 2020 by Ashley Regal and her business partner, Ellie. How do you pronounce that? Brannigan. That's what I thought. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't mispronounce it. She might get upset if she hears this. Total Body Wellness focuses on whole patient care. Combining conventional and functional medicine, their team creates individualized treatment plans based on root causes. I love that. Considering each patient's genetics, environment, and lifestyle. So that's really, real personal. In an industry plagued by overprescription and under-evaluation, Total Body Wellness addresses the growing demand for affordable, accessible, and high-quality wellness care. By prioritizing prevention and addressing dysfunction at its source, they offer a trusted alternative to over-the-counter substitutes and unnecessary prescriptions. It's a lot of stuff.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I got some of that from your website and just added a few more things in there. But I love the whole preventative things. I've seen a lot of pictures you'll see floating around on Facebook where you have a line, there's a guy at the window, and it's like, I'm here for preventative measures. So if you want to live a healthier lifestyle, come to my window, basically. Or this other window, you can just keep taking pills, not really get to the root cause.
Right.
And it's not it's just, and it's really cool. The line for the person with the drugs and all the prescriptions, the line is never ending. And there's no one standing at the line. So, what is it about your patients that make them understand I'm in the right line here? So I'm going to go to the window that is less visited versus the masses going to this window where it's all about medications, pills. They're not really. I see a lot of people. They don't really want to know what they need to do. They just want to fix the symptoms, not necessarily the root cause.
Sure. That's a great question. And I want to say, I think it's two-part. One is that most of my patients stood in that line for a really long time first. Okay. Meaning that. They've been there. They did that route. I'm not usually someone's first stop.
Okay.
They have gone through to see, let's just say it's chronic fatigue. That's probably the number one complaint I see.
Chronic fatigue.
I'm tired. And they've been prescribed an antidepressant. They're tired. And so then they get on, let's say, Adderall, and then they can't sleep because they're so jittery, and so then they get prescribed Ambien. I see this all the time. Those three. First it's an antidepressant, and then it's a stimulant, and then it's a sleep aid, all the time. And then they look back like, what am I doing? And then they might be referred by their primary care because I don't know. They've done their job. They've written those 3 prescriptions. Go see neurology. Maybe you have a sleep issue.
Really?
Maybe they get a sleep study. Maybe go see a counselor, which I'm not discounting counselors. I still definitely think that's a part of it, right? But they've waited in that line, and they've gotten to the front of the line, and they've gotten a pill, and then they go in the back of another line, and then they get to the front and they get another pill, and then they go in the back of another line, and eventually they hear from a friend or a coworker, that, oh, you feel better, oh, you look better, you're carrying yourself different. What are you doing? Oh, I went to Total Body Wellness. And then they come and see me. And so I would say that's majority of my patients were in that line. They waited and they just never got the answers. They have seen their gynecologists. They have the list of doctors is endless, right? So they're coming frustrated, they're coming exhausted, and they're coming just hoping to be heard. What is the plan? I don't want a prescription. I just want you to find out. And most often, they've never even had labs drawn. No one even looked at their labs. They've never even been asked simple questions. And so just the initial intake of questions that we ask, they're like, wow, they're excited to talk about these symptoms that they're experiencing, because it's often not just fatigue, right? But that's often how they're presenting, right? And of course, there is a subset, and thankfully that shift is growing, which we can talk about, which I know is one of the things that we want to address today. But there's certainly a shift of patients who are not willing to wait in line. They are much more proactive and preventative. And that is, I think, a big part of that is social media and these trends.
I agree with that. Yeah, the social media.
Right. And so there is that subset. And even in my experience of doing now, I left oncology in 2019. So over the last 5-6 years of 100% of my time being focused in this field, it's a huge shift on people who are just coming because they heard about it. They haven't done all the other doctors first, but that's still the primary presenting patient. But thankfully there is a big shift in patients taking more hold of their health and wellness. And so, I would say that's kind of the two parts of that for sure.
So there's an awareness, right? So you don't think people are just choosing to be in that line because they know necessarily this is the right line. They're just there because that's the default. That's all they know.
100%.
That's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so where that shift is coming from, I think a lot of that has to do with social media, meaning any media that could be podcasts. That's a lot of TikTok, Instagram. There's so much more access to education and information. And so people are coming prepared. They're coming with questions, or they're just seeing shared experiences. They're following influencers, or they're following people that say, oh, I went and got my labs drawn. And they might not live in the town that we live in. They could be in California, but they're like, wait a minute, I didn't know that existed. And so they're Googling, where around me can I get those labs drawn?
It's really interesting when you watch those commercials on all these medications. And I've been learning that we have more ads about medications than anywhere in the country. I think there are a lot of countries you can't even advertise.
You're only one of two.
One of two?
Well, one of two. Don't quote me. I think the other one is New Zealand.
Okay.
I don't quote me on that, but we are only one of two, and we're the least restrictive when it comes to drug ads in the United States.
I think Trump wants to change that, I believe.
Maybe.
I don't know. Or maybe Kennedy wants to change it, I should say.
And I want to make one quick point about the medications, too, and why people get on the line that they get in. You're employed. You have a job. You have insurance. You have insurance. So what does your insurance company allow you or tell you to do? It's going to tell you to go to your primary care physician or go to a specialist, and they're going to put you in that line because that's what you paid for. Right? You've already paid for that. I was just sitting here doing the math. If you have a family, you've got maybe $400 or $500 a month in insurance payments that comes out of your paycheck. You're gonna have several $1,000s worth of copays, or of copays, right? Plus what goes into your HSA. So all this money's already spent. It would seem foolish not to try to take advantage of this thing you've already paid for.
So the system's built this way.
Right.
It's designed this way.
That's a great point.
100%. The system is built that way. So what the shift is, right, is people are starting to go, well, what did I pay for then? Well, I paid, again, basic math, somewhere, a family of four is going to pay between $5,000 and $7,000 out of pocket in a year to have traditional health care. But what are they getting? They're getting an antidepressant, a stimulant, and a sleep aid. Right. And we're right back in it, right? So I think...
Interesting.
Right? And so and I think we're actually, I'll let her pick this back up, but I think that what the point is at a certain level, people are just like super frustrated. They're like, what? I've spent all this money and there's no value. And so again, any business, regardless of what field you're in, right? The question of value proposition and experience comes into play, right? And so in this case, They're like, I want to feel better. I'm already paying for a service that I'm not necessarily getting. So now here's this option.
You know what's really cool though too is I'm big on health. You mentioned about social media. Most of my feeds in Instagram are either about dogs or health. Those are the two that I get, and I love it. And I will tell you, not only do I feel better as I learn, because I apply what I learn. Right. I'm very passionate about my health. I want to learn as much as I possibly can. But not only am I feeling better, but I feel better about myself that I have that knowledge and that I'm empowered and like I'm in total control of, wow. I know we don't think about this, but I am in total control about what I eat, what I pick off the shelf. I'm in control of what I pick. When I go to the store, I'm in total control. I have awareness, I have knowledge, and I know what I'm doing. And I'm telling you, I've always eaten well, but like I've taken it to a whole nother level. And I'm just going to tell you, I feel better about life, just knowing that I'm actually making good decisions at the start when I'm putting in my body and how I'm doing that. It's really kind of empowering.
I think
for
the
me.
word's autonomy.
Yeah.
Right. There's that autonomy, and that's how people get, I think, into the front door of TBW. Mm-hmm. And I think what's important and where I think Ashley can really expand is like, but then what happens, right? And I think these are the big shifts. When I look at macro level trends, it's again now because we're moving away from, again, we just talked about the insurance model, right? So now we're moving into this cash model, right? We don't take insurance for a lot of reasons. Right? Mostly it's actually for the patient's benefit, and it actually ends up being cheaper for them. But then, so now there's this, well, I'm paying you. What is that? What does an awesome customer experience look like for medicine, right? Like, and I think, Ashley, you can probably speak to how TBW has kind of crafted its own kind of world and ecosystem because customers expect more.
Right. And I think, so let's use you for an example. You're eating better, you feel good, and you're like, man, now that I've really taken control of my health, I wonder what my labs say. Like, am I deficient in anything? Should I be taking any supplements? Am I good? Is my food enough? And you're just curious, right? There's a slim chance you're going to call your primary care doctor and they're going to just order whatever you want, or they're not going to, it's really more of like a reactive care, right? You're calling them because you have a symptom or a problem. You're not calling them because you already feel better. And I liken, and really most people should view health insurance like car insurance. You should still have it. If you get in a car accident, you need your car insurance to help pay for that. But your car insurance isn't changing your wiper blades. Your car insurance isn't changing your oil. Your car insurance isn't paying to change your brake pads, right? And so I think people think that, I have health insurance, so anything that's covered by that is all I need to be doing. That's not true. You need to think of it as like your health insurance is, if you get in an injured, or it's obviously conventional medicine is a staple, is a necessity. I would never say it's not. If you need to have it for those instances, but all of that preventative care, all that wellness, that's not covered by health insurance. It isn't. It won't probably ever be. You might be lucky enough to have some flexibility if you do have an HSA where you can use your card for things like that. But though that's on you to keep up with your wellness, to pay for a gym membership, to pay for healthy food, and to take supplements or see a provider for wellness is going to be an out-of-pocket expense, just like it is for your car. But if you didn't do those things to your car, it will run off the road. Your car will be worthless. If you don't do those things for your body, it's going to be the same, right? And so I think that helps people understand, like, oh yeah, you're right. This is an expense that I need to be budgeting for or to expect. I think people just think I'm already paying ungodly amounts a month for insurance. Why am I paying even more? I don't want to pay cash pay. But that's not how it works. That's not how the system is built. And I don't understand why we're pretending that it is, right?
I didn't even think about it until you said something, but I go to my primary care physician. They take my blood pressure and my heart, they just, you look good. I get my blood work done. I at least do that. And they say, okay, everything looks good. but that's about it. Everything else above and beyond that, I've had to do on my own.
Yeah.
My doctor has never said to me, "How do you eat?
Right.
What are your habits?" I mean, they never done
you said
that.
something I think is really important. Your doctor said you're good. Mm-hmm. Okay, do you want to be good or you want to be great?
Right.
And I think Ash, she can probably articulate this point more, but like the standard ranges from a primary care physician are different than the metrics that you use, yeah?
Right. Like they could say your vitamin D is good, it's 30, but if the reference range is 30 to 100, that's not good, right? And so it's, again, one of the key terms that we use in our language, which is really truly how we execute, is getting you optimal. Because again, this is science-based, but what is optimal levels, right? So whether it's a vitamin D or a B12, I understand that reference ranges are built on averages. That's all it is. And that reference range changes. So a reference range, let's say for a guy, and testosterone is going to be different at 25 than it is at 70, right? It's just an average. What are average people? Okay, you're at the bottom of average, but you're average. Okay, moving on, right? And so what people don't understand is that just because it's in quote unquote reference range doesn't mean that it's good. It could be average, but that doesn't mean that it's serving you, right? And so it's taking that deeper look at your blood work and saying, okay, yeah, you might be fine, you might be in reference range, but you can't sleep, you can't focus, you're anxious all day, and you're exhausted, and you feel like every day at 3 o'clock after lunch you need to lay down. Your labs are not normal if something is not normal if that's the case. And so, yes, of course, it's driven by data, it's driven by blood work, but we do integrate what's unique to Total Body Wellness over other places is that we also have nutrition counseling, we have lifestyle counseling, we have holistic counselor who does things like pain management and gets the body feeling good so you're sleeping good. And so it's very, very heavily based on education, on lifestyle, in addition to the more tangible things and the more like, let's say, objective versus subjective data like your blood work. And so, why I'm very passionate about when I have you in front of me, I'm going to educate you on that reference range, maybe what all the things vitamin D does, because I hope that you remember that, and that's going to keep you more consistent and compliant with taking it, right? Because if you don't understand why you're doing it, and you're like, I don't even remember why she said to take that, you're not going to be as consistent with taking it. And so a lot of my time is spent teaching my patients on what the lab is and why it's important and what role it plays. Because there's those trigger words like better energy, better mood, better libido. And they're like, wait, I want those things. I'm going to do what she says. Because those that do circle back that are like, man, I'm like, well, have you done anything I told you to do? No. Okay, well, right. I always say we can't evaluate efficacy without consistency. So, but part of that is educating along the way and understanding. But the thing is it's such a foreign concept, right? When you're first meeting me or my providers, this is such a foreign concept. And so it takes a little bit of like education and reminders of why they're doing what we're recommending them to do, because they're so used to that traditional healthcare model.
How many patients did you have when you first started? Like your first few months?
It's hard. I don't know how to quantify that.
Roughly how many?
Maybe what, a couple hundred, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, my schedule was, I've never had an empty appointment since the day I opened my clinic.
You had that many? Wow. How'd you have so many right from the start?
So it's I'm going to say it's a little bit of, our circumstances, like I said earlier in the podcast, were really unique to us. And so some of this is we cannot duplicate, right? We can write, we could have the most successful business and write a business plan and sell it to everybody who wants to do the same thing. Some of it you're not going to be able to duplicate. Again, what's unique about Brownsburg, it's kind of encapsulated. It's one of those towns where everybody kind of knows everybody, right? I also was just part of the town. I taught fitness classes. I had personal relationships. I did start working into a clinic where I was starting to see a few people who were already having really good results with what I was recommending. And I think that presence and that personal relationship was already established, and same for my business partner. So she had been in town seeing patients for a while, and even though legally we could not communicate to our patients, hey, we're leaving and this is where we're going, it's a small town, word of mouth, social media, they found us before we even opened our doors, and they were waiting in line to be seen. And so that is very unique to our story and just who we are, I think, as people and as providers. And so we are very lucky in that sense that there was never a day that I had an empty spot.
So this could be tied to branding, I guess. let's just keep your brand in mind. So you said you already had people lined up. What did people see? What did they identify that was different and unique about you that they wanted it? What made these people want to make that shift? Because we just talked a few minutes ago about what people are used to or accustomed to, why we're in that long line. So what is it about what you guys do that made people go, I want that. That's for me.
Again, at that point, when we opened our doors, it was 100% word of mouth. It was just people saying, I felt heard and I feel better, right? And so no matter what, it's got to be safe and effective care. We have to be educated and certified providers, and we have to achieve outcomes. If the outcomes aren't there, we're not going to get repeat customers, right? Mm-hmm. And so the only way you can get good outcomes is if you are highly educated and you know what you're doing, right? And so there are people who try to emulate these types of businesses, and they may not be well educated, and I take pride on that. That's something that I always say, like, nobody could talk me under the table when it comes to things that I'm passionate about. Like, I know more than you do, and I'm very confident on that. But that's because I take the time, and I put in the money and the hours to be educated on these things, to achieve outcomes. And so I think people trust me. And part of it is you have to walk the walk. I live a very healthy lifestyle. I'm a fitness instructor in town. Ellie's the same way. You look at us, and I think that people are like, well, I want to look like her. I want to feel good like she does. And so while it is part of the brand, is anyone who works for me, you have to be healthy, like, right? You have to understand, and that is like a requirement when you're applying, is I want to know how much investment you have in your own health care, because it is part of how are people going to trust us if we're not healthy and we're not walking that walk. And regardless if this is what I did or not, this is one of my biggest passions in my life. Like you don't own a healthcare business. One of your biggest passions is your own health. Unfortunately, our genetics are crap.
Not good.
So we're
an uphill battle for sure.
So thankfully, it could go one of two ways. It's like you either repeat the cycle, and on our own individual paths, we are like, absolutely not. Not only just like our maternal, but our maternal and paternal sides could not be worse leading up to. So that was a decision I made well before I decided to do this for a living. Okay. You only have one life, one body. Like, what are you going to do with it? And so I think that that's part of it too, is being an example of, hey, if you do the work, like, you're going to feel good.
So if I may, I want to take that same question and look at it maybe from a little bit more cerebral kind of business side. When the question is why did they come to you, right? So I think everything that Ashley said is absolutely true, right? But when we start to get into market research, right, like who are we competing against, and looking at market trends, right? There are clinics out there that are just like, their only job is to just give you Ozempic, right? Like they're just predicated on just this one idea, or there's predicated on this one idea of aesthetics, right? Like, we only do aesthetics. Hey, there's this other place that is just an IV bar or whatever, right? And so the question, if we go back to Ashley's example of the car, right? How inefficient is it for you to go to one place to have your windshield wipers changed, and then you're going to drive down the street and have your oil changed, and you're going to go down to the other place to have your brake changed, and then go down the street and get the air in your tires? It doesn't make any sense, right? All of them are required to keep this system optimally running, right? Now, what I'm not claiming is we're not trying to be everything to everybody. We're very, very, very selective on the services that we bring in, and it's not only from, does it have to, before anything happens, it has to come through my desk. And even if it does make that, then it goes to Ashley, and Ashley's got to say, how does this really truly fit into this idea of optimal health, right? So the services that we have are chosen to integrate with one another. Okay. Now, and like I was saying, when you look at our competition, that's not what they're doing. They're just, and I hope all the success in the world for them, but they're a one-trick pony. That's all they are. And they might have some people that are educated or more educated than Ashley, maybe, but they don't have this ecosystem of health where every service talks to the other. And I think that's really important. and it's there are people that do all the things that we do, not together and not built and scrutinized in a way like we have done. And I think that is super, super important when we talk about the foundations of what the success of the business has been is based on that.
So do you guys fit into an existing category, or do you guys feel you created your own category? Because one of the things we talked about, one of the things that motivated you to even want to have this conversation was we're not a medical clinic, we're not a med spa, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so because one of the challenges when you start something that's unique and new, how do you communicate to people what it is, because they don't know what it is because it doesn't exist? So if you're not a medical clinic, you're not a med spa, what are you, and what's your category, and how do you differentiate yourselves and stand out in your own category?
Yeah. So Ty, when you figure that out, call us.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say that is a challenge.
Well, I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
No, absolutely. It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's a challenge because it can be confusing to the consumer, and I have patients who are like, oh, I don't need to see my primary care doctor anymore. I'm like, yes, you do, right? We're not sick visits. If your ear hurts, you're not calling me for me to look at your ear or to diagnose you with a sinus infection. You need to keep your primary care physician. There's still a role for that. We're also not. There's a place in a role for med spas. Med spas are great. Like if I didn't own what I own, I would be a patient at a med spa to be able to get medical grade skincare. But that's not what we do. And so it is unique to try to communicate where that fits, because patients, a lot of times, it just feels so comfortable. I don't want to go see that doctor again. And I have to tell them, no, you still need to go at least once a year, right? And so it is a challenge. And I think that we have those conversations, and the way that we can do our best to communicate that online through social media and through our website is just, and people get it. And I think too why it is hard is because it doesn't exist and it's kind of foreign in healthcare. It's like, oh yeah, it is like a supplement to what I'm doing in other capacities. For example, for women's health, you still need to do your standardized women's health checks, whether it's a mammogram or a pelvic exam. There are roles for those traditional places, and then there's a role for what doesn't exist, which is, okay, now those are all fine, but now how do I achieve optimization? And that's where we come in. We are a clinic that helps, you could call it like a longevity clinic. We want you to live healthier longer, right? We don't want you just to live longer. We want you to live healthier. Longer. And so I would say it is a struggle. That is a great question. And because when somebody asks me what I do, it's very hard for me to say it in one succinct sentence.
I bet.
Yeah, and I think, from my vantage point, one of the things lately that I've really been kind of trying to sort out and kind of spent time kind of pontificating on is, we do have aesthetic services, medical grade aesthetic services, and they're wonderful. They're great, right? And at some point, we want to grow and nurture that part of the business. However, there's a dangerous road for us, because if I over-rotate and over-market on aesthetics, right, or the Botox, then we automatically, in people's mind, we become the med spa.
You become that.
Right, and we're not. And so so we are in this weird place where, I have to, when we talk about our marketing and we look at our posts and we look at the number of posts of what the service is, even if it's a cursory service centered around what the practitioners are doing, we have to put a lot of thought and intention around that to be very careful so that we don't become the neighborhood cryotherapy. We're not a sports medicine place, but just because we have cryotherapy, it works in a lot of other ways, but that brand identity for us and is challenging. And I think when people ask me, I just say it's optimize. It's a place to optimize your health.
How do your patients describe you? And when they talk about, you need to go over to this blank. How do your clients describe your business?
I would say a wellness clinic. They
Okay.
would say that.
A wellness clinic. I like that.
And I think patients that are there, they know that this is a medical-based clinic. But again, it's for example, I'm seeing someone every 3 months anyways, and so let's use the car, analogy again. It's like, you want me to buff this scratch out real quick before you leave, right? It's like, well, I'm already here. You might as well touch up these wrinkles on my forehead, right? So of course, like, why wouldn't we do that? But that's not the foundation of our business, but we're not going to also not do that. So it is finding that balance of how much time, resources, and energy do we want to spend on these ancillary services, because the consumers are asking for them, right? They're already in the door. They'll take them, but we want to be careful on how much we promote that and be careful on our definition of our foundation of what we're doing.
What's interesting too is you guys technically are in the healthcare industry, just a different way of doing it, a better way of doing it maybe.
Amen.
So you're in the healthcare industry. Oh, you're in the healthcare industry. Cool. Like, so are you a clinic? Nope.
Right.
Are you
And I don't want to get associated with primary care physicians. Right. Because everybody knows how we feel about those. And, I shouldn't say that. I've had a primary care physician that was wonderful, and I had a lot of trust in him, and he actually did have my best interest at heart. Maybe that's not everybody's experience, right? And they're also and this is one of the points I wanted to make earlier, right? When you go to a primary care physician, right, you're with the nurse for 10 minutes maybe, and then you sit in there and you wait for the doctor, right? And he's in and out under 10 minutes, right? And now he's obligated to do that, driven by not only his insurance, but his clinic owners, the hospital group that he's with, right? So he's driven. I think the inverse is true when you come to Total Body Wellness. You're with our nurses. You're probably with you for 2 minutes, and then the next 30 is spent with the providers. Like, that's what you're paying for. You're there. We have the way that the system is set up is that we're there. We have time blocks, right? We can't schedule anybody else in. Like, this time is your time, and you get to use it how you want to. And they will fill that time, that 30 minutes or 40, whatever it may be. They're going to fill that time, like I actually said, educating you, providing you with resources, explaining what the options are, and telling you, like, hey, this is how it all works and can work for you. And again, back to your question, which is, well, how do you define that? What is that brand identity? I don't know, because it just doesn't exist anywhere else. Right. It's unique to us.
Something that most people don't know, and I only know this because whether it's friends from school or other colleagues I've worked with in the past, a lot of clinics have been bought out by insurance companies. So I have a patient actually who is a nurse practitioner. She's a pediatric nurse practitioner. Her clinic was once owned by a bigger hospital chain, got bought out by an insurance company by requirement to keep her job. She has to see 25 patients in an 8-hour day, children, mind you. That's just to keep her job. So that is fully dictated by an insurance company. And so I'm like, where's the checks and balances here, right? Like, how is that even possible? But so their time, and she hates it, right? Like, she wants to spend more time with her patients, and so she's not afforded that luxury. And so it is just a unique experience when you come to a clinic like ours, because I get to decide how long this appointment is and how much time I'm going to spend.
All we need now is for those insurance companies to be bought up by the pharmaceutical companies, and
I'd say only a matter of time.
We'll have it all covered.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is kind of neat. I mean, that is an opportunity and a challenge whenever you're your own category, because how do you do that? Like we created here at Element 212, we created this thing called the Brand Insights, which is a different type of research, and but the challenge that we had was that we have this thing called Brand Insights that does this, and it's like, how do you can't call it research, because if you say it's research, then they think you're going to get the typical research. Well, it's different. Well, how's it different? Right. Well, I don't know of anyone else that does it like that. I'm used to this research. So there's like this default. So it's been a challenge for us. It's probably very similar to you. When we have the opportunity to sit in front of somebody and then one-on-one explain to them what it is that our Brand Insights is and what it does, this light bulb goes off and they go, I need that. I want that. It's hard to market it though.
Sure.
So we're a marketing company. We've had a hard time marketing it because it's its own category, and people don't recognize it. They don't search for it because it's not a key word out there.
Right.
It's been maddening. So my guess is with you guys is probably the same thing. People will refer, and then my guess is when they come in and really understand what you do, the light bulb goes off.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely 100% that's true. But I would also probably add this, and this is where, and I think Ashley has very much had a tight rein on our social media since the very beginning. Because I mean, again, that's was always been just again one of her strong suits. Mm-hmm. But what tends to happen though, right? And what maybe this idea of like, well, how do you define who we are? Of course, it's like, well, who am I defining it for? Right now, if we can drive people to our website, if we can drive people to our social media, mm-hmm. I think they get to understand. I think it's like I don't have to label it. I can let them. They get to kind of just see it like almost through osmosis. Of like they see the people, they see the faces, they see these services that are offered, and mm-hmm. like maybe even they can't put it into a nice clean bucket, but they still understand what we're all about mm-hmm. and what we're doing. And I mm-hmm. think that is attributed to a few things. Actually, again, having a really good visionary kind of mind for social media. Mm-hmm. And the second is, and we were talking about this on our way up here, was word of mouth. The old adage, right? Like the best advertising is word of mouth. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, in the Army we say like trust is earned by the teaspoon and lost by the bucket. Okay, so what we have done is this word of mouth is we have slowly but surely, teaspoon by teaspoon, earned the trust of all 6,000 plus patients that we have now. Okay, they have gone on, and what I can guarantee you, what we know to be true, and I would say this is what I think we said, we have about 90%. 90% of the people in our clinic know somebody else that goes to this clinic. Mm-hmm. It is this web of friends and family. Mm-hmm. It is almost rare. Like somebody be like, I don't know, I just saw an ad, right?
I would agree. I might even be 95% of the patients that come here is because somebody they know comes here, coworker, family, friends.
What? Well, you people come from like Ohio, don't you? Because there's
everywhere.
Because there's nothing in between them and you that.
There's people from Illinois,
California. All over the
Florida.
United States. We do. I try to limit it. But a lot of people that will drive in from all over the state for sure, and. Yeah, it is a unique culture for sure, and something that I'm passionate about, whether it's on our social media page or on our website, is you're always seeing also faces, like our faces. One thing that I am like a hard stop is stock images, right? So you have consumed, most people, they're going to like look from afar, they're going to follow us on social media, they're going to go on Facebook, they're going to look, but then when they come in, they're like, oh, I recognize everything here. This is the clinic. I recognize that face, and it does present as definitely accessible and tangible from the moment you walk in the door.
What trends and shifts do you see in the healthcare space that's driving people to you guys? What is that light bulb maybe that they have before they even come in? What's going on in the world? You talked about social media. What are people seeing? What are they learning? What are they coming to understand that's driving them to a place like yours?
I think the biggest thing is that they're understanding and kind of an awakening of like medication is not always the answer.
Right.
Like there's so many people for so long, all they wanted to do is they don't even want to see somebody. Just give me an antibiotic. I don't feel good. Just call me an antibiotic.
Do you think that's really true? I mean, that's not just a cliche. I mean, people really do that. They just call their doctor, get a prescription.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's my background, my degree is primary care, right? So yes, that is how it works. Mm-hmm. But thankfully, there is a shift where it's like, think the pendulum is starting to swing. Like they're looking at their medication list, or like us, they're looking at the generation right before us and how sick they are and how unhealthy they are in this list of medications. Especially as most of my consumers are at an age where they're adults. They're anywhere from 35 to 55, and they may be starting to be responsible for taking care of. They're in that in between. I'm taking care of my family, and I'm also helping taking care of my parents. And wow, why are they on 17 medications? And why am I having to take them to all these doctors? And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a part of that. And so it's really because there is so much access now to information and to sharing, whether it's the Brownsburg Mom Facebook group. right? That people are engaging in those conversations, whether it's in person or it's online, mostly online, and there's so much more access to information out there. On healthcare, on anything in life, on what shoes to wear running, right? You're not just like showing up to the running store and asking the salesman. You're doing your research, you're going online, you're looking on Facebook groups. People are doing that for anything that they're consuming. And one of the things that they're consuming right now is their wellness. And so that is how they're finding us. And I will say, because we are so reputable, is we also actually get a lot of referrals from physicians. So there's a lot of gynecologists and primary care doctors that do refer their patients to us, which I think speaks volumes on our reputation and our outcomes, because they're like, again, there's a primary care physician that she's like, listen, my hands are tied. There's only so much I can do for you. Go see Total Body Wellness. They'll take a deeper look. I'll see you next year for your annual exam.
How is the patient of Total Body Wellness? Is that a short-term thing, long-term thing? Is it a lifestyle commitment?
It's forever. Forever, however long you want to feel good.
Right. There's not a program that says if you do this, then you'll achieve this goal.
But I also think too, some of the services, right? Like we have a nutrition, like a certified dietitian, right?
Yeah.
She's going to teach you.
Yeah.
Certified fitness trainer. We have a gym there, like a little small workout center. We can teach you how to do these things, and maybe that you can take kind of ownership of that as time goes on, right? But what can't be replicated, and this is the most basic example, this can be extrapolated 100 times over, right? Look outside. It's gray. It's snowy, right? It's wintertime here in the Midwest. You cannot get vitamin D, the natural vitamin D. And guess what, brother? You can't even buy the stuff that you buy at CVS. It cannot get you there. That's it. And again, I'll let the medicals. But I'm telling you, we figured out you can't get it. You can't get what you need. So maybe you just are coming, even if we would love it if maybe that's all you need is your vitamin D or your supplements or those things that you need. But unfortunately, there are environmental factors that are just not going to exist. And I'm going to speak about this kind of independently, but let's talk for a moment about men's health. And this is where I think there's the biggest opportunity for us, and I think this is the biggest opportunity for those that are listening, right? 70% of the patients at Total Body Wellness are women. And I think that's okay. And I love that for them. But as a man, I know the impact of the things that are happening, right? There's just, again, environmental factors, there's genetics that are not, as a man, right, we're just never going to be optimized. Will we be alive and will we be okay? Sure. But like I said earlier, are we going from good to great, right? Do you want to live the rest of your life dependent on Blue Chews, or do you want to get to the root problem of what's going on and feel confident and happy about, and and confident and happy and well? And if you are as a man, like, how are you showing up in your marriage or your relationships or as a father? Because you feel so much better. And that's really the challenge, I think, to you and anybody that's listening, right? That this is not just for women. And I know that we've talked a lot about women's health, but I'm going to say it's just as equally as important for men as well.
So why do you think 70% are women and so few are men?
Women are just going to take that step. They're just going to do that first. And a lot of our men, almost, I would say 90% of, so if you break down that 30% of patients that are men, 90% of that populations came because their wife is already a patient, and they have drugged them there, and they said, okay, I feel so much better, you have to go. And so that is, or let's say, though I hear this a lot from men, oh my gosh, I can't keep up with my wife, she is like, her libido is off the charts, she's so much energy, like I need to see what's going on with me. And in one of the questions about how long are they patients, well, first of all, you're a day older every day. So your biology is changing. You are aging every day. Your cells are changing. Your needs are changing. So in men, like, again, your hormones, just because we talk and it's very well known about menopause, which is the cessation of hormone production in women, the same thing happens to men. It's called andropause. It's just not as talked about as much. So your body changes, your hormones change, your mood change, your composition changes. You see these most older men have skinny arms and a big belly. Like, why is that? What happened to that weight shift? It is a very biological change, and guess what? We can shift that around a little bit, because we also know that the wider your belly is, or the larger your circumference of your abdomen is, the more likely you're going to have high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And so if we can thin down that circumference, you can avoid being on prescriptive medications, you can live longer. And so, you know, I might see you initially, we go over your labs, I say to plan, okay, I'll see you in 6 weeks. Because I want eyes on you. Because what I know is I can't just give you a plan and just hope for the best. I need you to prove that, like, A, what we're doing is working, and if not, we need to change it. And then I might go 3 months. And if 3 months is good, okay, let's do maybe 4 months next time. And there are some patients now that I've had for years that I only see once a year, right? I do, we call it a wellness lab. We look at things that your primary care doctor is just not going to look at. It's not in there. You know, they don't have the ability to check those labs. And so I probably won't even look at your cholesterol or your hemoglobin A1C because it's being checked by your primary care. I want to see it, but I'm going to look at everything else, and I might even see you just once a year because it holds you accountable and holds me accountable to keep you well because you're 1 year older when I see you, right? Your cells are dying, things are changing. You could have updated family history. Within this year, you could tell my mom and my aunt were both diagnosed with breast cancer this last year. Like, okay, that's a big change. We need to adjust for that. And so, or you may come in and say, I had a horrible injury this year. I got in a car accident and my back has just never recovered. Well, what are we doing about this? We need to have a plan. And so it's, our patients, I would say, are lifers. I always joke, you can say a patient just however long you want to feel good. If you don't want to feel good anymore, you don't have to keep seeing me. But in the beginning, it can be, a little bit more timely, but it's certainly, if I'm doing my job the way that I shouldn't be seeing you that often, right? That means I'm doing what I should be doing.
So how does someone in your space, how do you guys continue to innovate and grow and improve and things like that?
Research and education. I'll let Ashley take the education piece and I'll talk about research. A lot of times what we're doing is, whether it's Ashley or on my own accord, right? This operations, I'm networking with other medical professionals. I'm going to other spas. I'm going to med spas. I'm like doing treatments, right? I'm sitting down, I'm lucky enough to, have a decent network of people that are in the space. And it's just like, it's all about the research, right? I just met this week with the COO of a medical device, right? I didn't want to talk to the salesperson, right? I was able to network my way to the CEO, and I want to talk to him, and I'm like, tell me why this is going to shift the paradigm. And it's all of that, it's research, it's study, and then it's, who are their competitors? And I research it, and like Ashley said earlier, I spent a lot of time, and then only after I think that, hey, I think that there might actually be something to this, that's when I say, all right, Ash, now it's time for us to have a discussion about it. But what I think is it's kind of the work that nobody sees is the time that's spent reading articles. And I know for the education stuff, right, as medical stuff, it's just research. And when we decide to bring something in, like I said earlier, we actually believe in the science behind it. And we actually believe that it integrates into a larger network of healthcare that we're providing, and that it'll speak to something that maybe we had a gap in, or maybe we want to find some improvement in. So that's the research part. As far as the education stuff goes.
Sure, absolutely. And one thing that, when you choose to be a healthcare provider, you take an oath to do no harm. And so if I'm going to recommend something, prescribe something, I have to ensure, number one, that it is a safe option, right? I cannot put someone at harm for something that I think might work. And so if I have to be very, very sure and have tangible evidence that this is a viable option, right? And so that comes from being educated. And, unfortunately in this space, because it's not all conventional medicine, I do have to think outside the box. And whether it's not just a subscription to, the American Medical Journal, but it's the European Medical Journal and the British Medical Journal, because that's where a lot of good research comes out of when it becomes more like functional medicine, which I don't box this as a functional medicine clinic, but you're able to see a lot more of those resources there. Conferences are huge. It is timely, it's expensive, it takes away from patients, but that is one of the most valuable that I have found, because you get so many like-minded. It's hard. We live in a small town in the Midwest, and so when you can pull people from all over the country who are doing the same thing, as the same passion, and share education and share resources and sit down and get to these lectures, I would say that is a very important part of ongoing education. And so I would say that, I'm not going to risk, certainly, number one, the health and the safety of you. But secondly, selfishly, I'm not going to risk my medical license and I'm not going to risk my job or my reputation on something that I don't believe to be true. And I'm not going off of a feeling, I'm going off education and data and tangible evidence. And so what I love is, because I am such a nerd when it comes to science and cellular medicine and biology, I'm like, go on. Like, wow. For example, I always like to say this, it's kind of one of my funny facts about me. In college, I had to take an elective, and a lot of my friends signed up for walking, and I thought that would be fun. You could do ballroom dancing. I ended up taking organic chemistry for my elective because I just loved chemistry so much. I loved my professor, and I knew that she'd take care of me, and I didn't want to stop learning about chemistry.
What grade did you get?
I got an A.
Wow.
And so
pretty good.
I thought, well, I just really like chemistry. And so again, that comes from just an innate passion for learning, but it's very, very important. And I champion anyone who maybe hears this and goes seeking for someone similar, a provider. They need to be educated. They cannot be TikTok educated. They cannot be podcast educated. They need to be educated from, legit sources, and you want to make sure. But I think that outcomes speak for themselves. If you're at a busy clinic that has almost 7,000 patients, the outcomes speak for themselves. So I think, that's very important. And a requirement for my employees too is they have to be self-led, motivated, and have a passion to be educated.
So you have your own category, you have your brand. When you're doing your research and you're learning about different things that are out there, so on any given day, this is who you are today.
Right.
What guidelines, principles, or values, like how do you, because you say you don't want to be everything to everybody.
Right.
You're careful and particular about what you do. How do you determine whether something that you learn about makes sense for total body wellness in your patients? So
I think that one of the things that I think we're really good at doing is tempering growth. Okay. What it makes sense for us is that it's financially viable, right?
All right.
There are things that I'm sure that there was a device that I looked at, I loved. I had a great experience on it, but when I literally sat down and did the Excel, it didn't make money, right? And I want people to have that experience. They're just not going to have that experience at Total Body Wellness, okay? So first off, it has to make financial sense. It also has to align with our strategic plan. Okay. Right? Very much tempering growth, right? What was the famous NBA case study of Yingling, right? Yingling was the most demanded beer, but grew the slowest, right? And they did that because they wanted to make sure that they could maintain quality. And that is the same thing that we're doing. So it only makes sense if it makes sense as part of our strategic plan. That's number one. Does it meet our strategic plan? 2, is it financially viable, right? And then only after that, then that's when from that point on, I have to kind of step back and say, does it, and Ashley and Ellie decide, does it make sense for our patients? Right. And those are the 3 things. Like if they meet those 3 requirements, then we're probably going to bring it in, but we're not gonna. I think we made some mistakes early on of like, let's try it. Let's see what happens. The see what happens model doesn't, or this idea that, and I've seen this in other businesses where, it's very popular. What's a good case study? Frozen yogurt places, right? They got very popular, and so everybody, when you get late onto a trend, you're never going to succeed, right? And then they all close down, right? So we also want to make sure, again, being smart about it, right? And we're not being oversold by the TikToks and the Instagram reels, because listen, man, there's some really good marketing out there, really good, and it's very easy to get consumed by like, this idea, and this holds true across all business. If I love it, everybody must love it. And I think, and again, I've seen it time and time again. You get married to your own idea, right? And you're not willing to be objective to not only the finances, but also other voices of reason. And so we parlay and we bounce around ideas and we challenge each other, right? And a lot of times ideas just die on the vine. Or if something's really passionate, right? Like, I'm like, no, we really need to consider doing this. Okay, why, right? And then again, does it make sense to our strategic plan? Is it financially viable? And does it serve our patients, right? And so there's always that constant discussion. It's never ending. It's actually exhausting sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have boundaries. Wow. You can't be everything to everyone. And so I tell my patients, I'm not going to treat Lyme's disease or mold toxicities or PANS or Panda cyprotoxicities. I'm not the girl for you. I'm happy to give you resources. It is okay to say no. You're not going to lose out on business. And so I think that if you try to be everything to everyone, you spread yourself too thin. Mm-hmm. And I'd rather do the things that we do exceptional and leave the other things to other people who do those things exceptionally, instead of doing all the things okay, you know. And so, you know, and that's something that Ellie and I make that decision, you know, where the buck kind of stops there with, it's like, I don't want to be responsible for that. And that's okay. But we also champion, you know, some of our other providers who are really passionate about certain services. We're like, absolutely. So we do let them lead that too. It's not just me. It's not just Ellie. It's not just Tracy who are making these decisions. You know, we have our holistic provider who is passionate about ozone therapy and letting her own that and prove to us why and see outcomes. And you know, a nurse practitioner that's really into men's health. And, you know, she really wants to work with men with erectile dysfunction. And that's great. You know, we're okay to bring that service on and give and empower these our employees and our providers to champion that. And just like our, you know, our nutrition and health expert who had been a certified personal trainer for years, and she has been asking about, like, what if I did some training in office? You know, it took a couple years to get there, but again, that's where, you know, she makes a case for it. She brings it up. I kind of pumped that to Tracy. He does the math. Okay, well, realistically, how much does it cost to build a gym? I mean, literally an Excel sheet on the floor, the dumbbells, you know, the marketing. How much are you going to charge for personal training? How much time is that going to take? Is it worth it? And he's like, listen, I think it's a no-brainer. It's going to work out. And I said, okay, let's go. And so we, you know, try to create that culture internally that we are also allowing for our employees to bring that up, but then it comes to proving it. Like, is this going to make sense?
That's pretty cool. Okay. I'm trying to think of my next question. There was something you said. What was that therapy, by the way? I thought I heard ozone therapy.
Ozone therapy.
Oh, it is ozone therapy. Yes. I thought maybe I heard.
Yes.
What is ozone therapy?
So ozone therapy has been long used, and again, this is where you're going to see really cool. Again, standard of care in places like in European countries, even first-line care for things like cancer and chronic disease. But what it is ozone is, so you have your oxygen molecule O2, you added an additional molecule, so that's O3, which is ozone. And so many dysfunctional or toxic cells in the body are very fragile, and so when you over oxygenate them, they will die off. They can't sustain that environment. And so what we actually do is take your blood, we will over oxygenate that, and it becomes such an unstable environment to often things like, again, truly even cancer cells. But again, we do not market, and we do not claim to be a cancer treatment center. So I say that lightly. I'm not claiming that is what we personally do, but there is evidence to support that. But certainly toxins, which we are exposed to when you live in the United States, and if you're a consumer of even drinking out of this cup, I'm probably drinking a little bit of toxins out of there.
Really?
Right? And so anything that are packaged, go and start my car, I'm going to breathe in some fumes. It's just, we're going to hold on to some of these toxins, right? And so it's just helping our body kind of create such an unstable environment that it's good for detoxing. So in how we practically use that in our clinic, it can be for everybody, but what we'll typically strategically do it for is for, you know, someone with autoimmune disease or just chronic illnesses, and some who are fortunate and have the time and resources just do it for anti-aging, right? The healthier your cells are, the better you're going to look and the longer you're going to live. And so there is a subset of patients that just truly come because they can, and they do it because they have the time, they have the money to do it. But when we recommend it or we prescribe it per se, it's for those specific, more like chronic autoimmune and diseases that, again, they're not afforded such luxuries in traditional healthcare models. Otherwise, they're just given a prescriptive for a medication that makes them feel worse. And so instead, maybe try ozone therapy where you'll feel better and you can avoid going on prescriptive medications with so many side effects.
Interesting. Wow. Ozone therapy.
Who knew?
Really, there are toxins probably coming from this?
So this is an example, but
I'm really hung up on that. I'm like, really?
Absolutely. So if you buy something that was in plastic, the chances of some of those BPAs being on your food, you can't avoid it. It's going to happen.
Was this in the dishwasher before this?
Yes.
With a pod that had a plastic wrapping and a door that was lined in plastic and the shelves that were lined in plastic where it got nice and hot, but while it was dry. Damn it.
It's unavoidable. I always say, unless you live out in literally the country and you grow your own food and you eat your own food and you slaughter your own animals, it is what it is.
I know, but
It's unfortunately health.
Just
the
painful.
That's beyond healthcare, right? That's just and we'll see where times take us. But there are we're the least regulated in what the ingredients that are in our food, the way that our food is colored, the way that our food is packaged, and so for all of us, we're fighting a battle that most of us don't know we're fighting. So we're not educated on that, but we just it's very. You'll look at the ingredients list in Cheerios in the United States, and you'll grab that same box, and you go over to England, and you grab that same Cheerios, and you're like, why are there 30 ingredients, and why are there 4 ingredients? And so our body has to process all of that.
if in the very beginning I mentioned to you that when I go to my primary healthcare, my blood work looks good, so we'll see you in a year. All the changes that I've made has just been from a desire to learn, a desire to improve. And again, the reason why that's blowing my mind is because I'm continually reminded that even though I'm doing so much more than maybe the average person, I still don't know so much.
Right.
So what are some of the things, and this could be distinguishable for you, they come to your clinic, what are some of the things that you're teaching your patients that they take home? Like, how do you affect your patient's lifestyle at home so they're making better decisions outside of...
That's a great question. And so it's really simple. I always say there's 5 things, because the problem is people come in and there's such a mess. I'm not going to talk to you about your plastics in your food and the ingredients in your foods, not when I first meet you. That's so overwhelming. You really have to start macro level. You cannot.
No, I understand.
Because even if I talk to someone who I can see on their blood work, they cannot have gluten. I'm not telling them you're going to walk out of my door and never have gluten again. I'm like, just start with breakfast. Just see if you can nail breakfast down. And when I see you again, tell me all the things that you're eating for breakfast. Don't include gluten, then we'll work on lunch. It is not realistic. But here, what I try to tell my patients, there's 5 things. You have to sleep at night. You have to prioritize sleep, right? So none of this costs money, and none of this has to do, even if you never see me again, you have to...
You have full control over that.
You have to sleep. You have to manage your stress. You cannot be a stressed out person. Whatever that looks like, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's you get rid of some things that aren't serving you, you're
therapy.
Therapy. You have to look at what you're eating, right? You cannot eat like an idiot. We'll just start with that. Just don't eat like an idiot. Don't eat McDonald's every day. That's all. You have to exercise. You have to move your body. I'm not saying join a gym. I'm not even saying put on tennis shoes. You have to move your body. And then lastly, you have to have, so there's so much data, it's just a social support network, right? That's it. It does not matter, plus or minus anything else I tell you to do. Those are your priorities in life.
And hydration, I would think, too, right?
That comes with diet, right?
Can you define social support system? Just because I think that might need a little bit of clarification.
And so what we see is so whether that's a coffee with a friend, or again, and that's maybe where therapy comes in, but you have to have some sort of social outlet, and that's just as important in your health than what you eat. Or it could be a hobby. It could be a personal thing. You're not even meeting anyone, but you have found worth in a hobby, or you're meeting a friend for a walk. You need to prioritize that.
Okay.
And so again, that's where we start, because I cannot go through everything in the beginning, and someone comes in, they're like, I'm just so much more tired. I'm not sleeping, and I don't know what's going on, and they're frustrated. I'm like, well, what has happened since the last time I saw you? Well, my dad's in hospice now, and my husband laid off. I'm like, okay, we don't need to worry about what supplements you're not or not taking. We're not changing anything. This is a big life change. What are you doing to help support that? And so, it's very, very macro level for most people, because for whatever reason, these are not life skills that are innately inherent. And so unless you're passionate about it or proactive, it's really the simple things that most people are missing.
So you guys have the location in Brownsburg. I know your goal was to add 3 or 4 more.
But eventually, yeah. Hopefully, we'll see.
Hopefully,
hopefully we start with one.
Yeah. So it must be hard. We talked in the very beginning about the growing pains, right?
Yeah.
That come with it, and how much there is. So it's daunting. Going to a second location is not just something I want to go to a second location. There's a lot that goes into that. At the same time, I hear your passion, and I'm sure if you could just snap your fingers, it's almost like the Bible. Get the Bible. Share the gospel with
Spread the good
everybody.
news, yeah.
Right. Spread the good news. Share the gospel. That's really what we want, right? So there must be a part of you that you're so passionate about this, and there's probably this desire, like, I wish everyone could hear our message. I wish everyone could experience what we offer, but it just doesn't work like that.
Right.
So how do you guys balance this eagerness and this passion to grow and spread the gospel, all right, at the same time knowing your limitations and taking it and having the self-control and doing what needs to be done to do this methodically and correctly?
I think that's where Tracy can speak to, but what he has taught us is repeatable systems, which we had none of. And so when we were like, what is our goal in 10 years? How are we going to work backwards? And I'll let him expand on this, but it was, you've got to create repeatable systems. So if my nurse tomorrow is like, listen, I just really want to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, I love what I do, but I want to be home. Okay, she has to be replaceable, right? And so I cannot rely on her specifically as a person. So whatever that is, the way we answer our phones, the way we order our supplements, the way we send out payroll. And so that's something that he has been very passionate about teaching us about a year or two ago as part of this graduation into sophomore year is these systems you have in place are not repeatable.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tribal. So the death of a business is tribal knowledge. Okay. And just a kind of quick psychology lesson. And it happens a lot in business. People will hoard information. Okay. And it's and I've seen it happen a lot. And it happens a lot in like larger businesses too.
What does that mean? The hoard
means that they want to hold on to all the information,
right?
Because it does two things. A, it gives them a sense of value to the business, and also whether consciously or subconsciously, they believe that if they hold this, they are not replaceable. Okay. Now, what I believe, and philosophically, when I look at creating, again, efficiency in a business, right, is there's no such thing as tribal knowledge. And not even if somebody were to leave, but or if somebody just decides, hey, I want to change positions, or for whatever reason, they become unavailable. And if they hold tribal knowledge without things that are in, share drives or, online access, or there's not a process, or it's not documented, or there's not somebody the question I would first ask is okay, so, and if we create a process, who's the person that checks the process? Because not only do you have to have it, but you have to be able to audit it, right? Mm-hmm. I'll give you the easiest example is an inventory. So if somebody buys product and then they put it on the shelf, they should not be the one to inventory it because there's no checks and balances, right? So, but if you have somebody who can audit it, but guess what? That person who audits it can also execute on that process if they needed to. They could also do all of the inventory management. Because to audit it, you have to know all the steps, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that sometimes a small business owner will be like, especially like retail or, any other kind of services business where you sell things other than services. They're like, well, you're just making something that's not that hard more complicated. Maybe right now, today, yeah. But in 10 years when there's 4 or 5 locations, right? Then it is a very complicated process, and now you're digging yourself out of a hole when I should be worried about my clients, my patients, or my growth, or expanding services. I'm trying to figure out how to manage the tens of thousands of dollars worth of widgets or parts or whatever it is that I don't even know where they are, and I, as a business owner or as a strategic director, do not have time. Like, I can't focus on the things that are important if I haven't built systems to allow individual contributors to take on that and do those things for me. So
you believe, and a lot of the stuff that you're talking about is behind the scenes. The clients never see it. So you actually believe that if you were to grow too fast,
yeah,
and there were problems on the backside that
right.
Even though the patients couldn't see it, that would affect the way you deliver your quality of service to your patients.
It's dollars in and dollars out, dude. Like, So there's this old saying, it's we can fix any problem, you just got to rub money on it.
All right.
Okay. But as a small business, there's, even as great as we're doing, like there's not an infinite amount of money, right? And the most expensive thing that most people have especially in services, is labor, right?
Right.
So because you can either throw money at it, but what essence that really means is you're throwing people at the problem. And people cost money. And they're the most volatile, they're the most turnover, they're the most unpredictable.
I feel like I have a good example.
Sure.
So, for example, then this kind of happened to us. So if we don't have a good structure in place, I don't know what I'm doing. I call Comcast. I'm like, can you put some phones in? We have some phones. There's a voicemail. We're growing. More patients are calling. More patients are leaving voicemails. They're not getting checked because we don't know where they're going. There's who's responsible for that. But someone who should be calling really the nurse line's calling up front, and someone who's wanting to make an appointment is now taking my nurse away because she's answered that phone and she's trying to make an appointment, but I need my nurse to room my patient. Now I'm late because I couldn't room my patient because she was on the phone on a call that she shouldn't have been on, that she can't get off now. And so in the more and more patients that we have, because we're growing, the more and more phone calls that we're getting, right? And so that's a problem, right? It's just like this, it may seem very trivial or minute, but it's actually, it snowballs over time. And then now it's like, I called 3 days ago and nobody called me back, and I have not gotten this question answered. Like, well, what voicemail did you leave a line on, right? And that does affect a patient experience, which then again, if we're working on, word of mouth, they're like, well, they never call you back, so I don't know about going there. I tried it, but I never got a call back.
Yeah.
So it's something seems very trivial when it's like, okay, what is our phone tree plan? Who is our service provider? Is this phone system make sense for a medical clinic? And when, as the patient experience, when you call and it's like, always going to voicemail, you're not going to keep calling. And so Tracy came in, totally wiped out our phones, and now it's a system where it's like your third and like give it 5 more minutes, your call will be answered. And so it's kind of this queue, and this is all based off of research and again. But that was an important change, which wasn't necessarily a problem with a small operation. But as we grew and we grew and we grew, and now we have 4 or 5 providers with 4 or 5 different nurses that patients are trying to get a hold of, or scheduling, or I just want to get an IV. Like, how hard is it just to call and get an IV? That becomes a problem. And so it's those sort of systems that had to change and grow with as the business grew.
Are you guys more, just curious, are you guys more excited or more scared of growth? Are you guys excited or scared about the next location? Or neither?
I think there's a lot of trust in kind of the universe, right? And like, I know it sounds like cliche, but again, we're not gonna force something, right?
Correct.
We've looked at a ton of spaces, right? That theoretically, we could have put a bunch of money into remodeling and we could have made it perfect. But again, like, part of this, and I know it sounds cheesy, is like some of it you have to trust intuition, right? It has to feel right. And you have to trust that. And I also think that when there's confidence in your plan and when the research is done and
you feel like you've done everything you can,
right?
And
Like, there's not a reason to feel it doesn't necessarily feel, I don't know, you can speak for yourself, it doesn't feel exciting and it doesn't feel scary. It seems like it feels logical.
Feels like, okay. That's
right.
pretty interesting.
I think that if it works out, it will work out. And if it doesn't, I'm also okay with that. The way that we can grow and strategically build a business as it is, I'm also okay with that. I don't feel like we would fail if we didn't ever open up a second location. Right. I think it makes sense. I think there's so much need. It's almost like I feel like we're doing a disservice to people if we can't help them have access to our business model and to achieve wellness, but also I do not, when I lay my head down at night, it's not my biggest goal in life is to have a second location. Again, I think it makes sense. And if it works, that is exciting.
So you never got into this because you dreamed of having 5-10 locations?
Absolutely not. And in fact, which is kind of neat is on our accountant who has, we've been with the same company since, again, before we even had an LLC. After he saw the books, after the first quarter, he's like, I'm going to need you guys to define what you want out of this, because your business is this. This is not something I see. He's like, every small business that I have ever worked with in my experiences, when they start, they're on a bicycle, and then they graduate to a moped, and then they graduate. He's like, you are in quarter 1 in a Ferrari. You are taking off so fast. And he's like, you need to figure out what you want from that. And I said, and especially then, because again, Tracy wasn't on board, and this was just after we started, so it was a lot of work. I said, this is the hardest I want to work ever, like right now. So if you're asking me what my goals are, it's only to work less than what I'm working right now. So I, again, because of my personal boundaries,
It's funny.
it's not, I'm not trying to like have a store on every corner. Like, and I appreciate that in other businesses. What I'm passionate, like, is seeing you and like you coming to see me and walking away feeling better. If it makes sense and we are afforded the opportunity, and again, I think a combination of, again, numbers and data, but also into like the universe. If we are afforded the right place at the right time, I think that's going to be such a cool opportunity, and I will have full confidence and I won't feel stressed because I know it was the right decision. But we're not going to force that to happen.
If you get busy, just pass it off to him. He'll figure it out.
Well, and I tell you, like, I've looked at, and as part of this strategy, I've looked at a lot of other businesses, and I have business mentors that I go back to and I talk to, and if you look at just our P&L, every business on the planet would say you should have 3 locations open up tomorrow, right? They would say that, but because there are other businesses, a lot of times like. Counter service restaurants will do this, or people that will buy areas for franchises, right? They're just like, well, we've got to get the most coverage, we've got to get the most spread, and then again, and this is really kind of sums up everything that we've talked about today, right? At least from the business side, which is, are you being intentional? Do you have your whatever your client is or your customer, right? Whether it's a patient, client, or customer, whatever, do you truly have their best interest at mind, right? Are you being methodical? Are you doing the research? Or are you in this just to make money? And if you are, like, that's okay, and sometimes that might work out. A lot of times it doesn't. There's a whole lot easier ways to make money than running a consumer-facing business. I can tell you that. There's a whole lot easier ways to make money. So if you're in it to just make money, no, you can make money. But if that's what leads your charge, I think that you will struggle. And I think that Ashley and Ellie have designed a tone to the business, right? Where again, we've put the patients first. And I think if you do that, the rest will just follow.
Pretty cool. What do you guys see? What do you guys see happening in the next 5 years? Any shifts in trends in the healthcare industry, whether that be yourself or we talked a lot about the state of the healthcare now. Haven't really seen many changes over the years. Do you see consumers driving? So, you guys, let me ask you this a different way. You guys are filling a very specific need that people may seek or they may fall into through a referral. It seems like the healthcare industry in general has been pretty much the same, and I don't think it's going to change much until consumers demand it, right? So do you guys see yourselves changing much in the next 5 years? Or do you see the healthcare industry in general changing much in the next?
That's a great question. I don't think in our lifetime on Earth that we will witness healthcare changing. I mean, there's too much, not big pharma and insurance. We will not experience that. There's too much money and politics in that. We will not be afforded that luxury.
Okay.
It's not going to happen. But I will see, what I have seen is partnerships along the way, because just because you're a primary care physician doesn't mean you don't want that for your patient.
Right.
Your hands are tied. You have to see so many patients. There are things you just can't prescribe. There are labs you can't order. And so I think I'll see more like partnerships in that way, because that's what I have experienced. If you're saying what's the next 5 years, if I can retrospectively look at the past 5 years, is so many more, like I said, referrals from traditional providers, from conventional medicine, and who are doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. But they're going to also say, keep doing what I want you to do, but then also go do this. And so I think that we're going to try to make the best of what we can, because you're right, it is consumer driven, but just because I think it's too far entrenched in money and politics to see a huge healthcare change. That's not going to happen. But maybe one day. I don't think for us, but I do think if I could pick something, I hope to see just more, hopefully, collaboration and centers like us, and hopefully we.
And I think what'll be really interesting too is, especially physician owned or practitioner owned clinics where they have lots of partners. If I were a bet man, which I'm not, but if I were going to bet money, I think we will slowly start to see them move to the cash model.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think with with the recent events surrounding the healthcare and the stuff that happened, right? What was super interesting to me, and I'm not saying it was good or bad, I'm using it as a data point, right? That public reaction to that was like kind of surprising, right? Like they were like, there was this sense that the healthcare industry has wronged them, right? And so
he represented that.
And again, I hate that. It's awful. But again, what I'm saying is the data point there was the consumer reaction, and I think that hospitals will be very, very hard to do this, right? Or hospital groups, or you know what I mean. But independent, whether they're therapists, whether they're practitioners, where we see this a lot, right? I live in Miami. There's a lot of cosmetic surgery, right? Like that's all cash business, and there's no shortage of business, right?
That's crazy,
right? And so I think that again, if a family of 4, I would challenge anybody to sit down and do the math. I do think, like Ashley said, you got to have it, right? Especially if you've got to have the thing, like if there were something catastrophic, right? That you need, but your day-to-day needs. Move to an HSA or get away from this copay model. Doctors, get away from it, challenge it, do the math. Go ahead and I think doctors are going to move away from insurance, right?
Wow.
Because again, they can provide better service cheaper.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing that I want to make a point of that I think that I have seen and that we will continue to see is this stigma against functional medicine. So what people that don't understand it think that it is, and other physicians, including myself as an oncology nurse practitioner, we'd have a patient come in all these supplements and we're like, oh, this is voodoo, this is lotions and potions in a pot that they're mixing together, right? And so what they're finding is this respect and appreciation for a legit way to treat medically. And so this stigma against a more holistic or functional approach is really starting to lift, which is opening up conversation. Instead of your primary care doctor being like, ugh, you go to Total Body Wellness, like, ugh, they're just they're just a cash cow. No, they're like, oh, awesome, you're going to Total Body Wellness too. I'm so glad you're going there. And so that's a huge shift that we are seeing and that we will certainly continue to see as we see that this is data driven. This is objective information. This is science and biology. And unfortunately, for some reason, it just has a stigma against that it's like voodoo magic, and it's not. And so I think that you'll, like, as people understand the science behind the way that you treat somebody, I really hope at least to see that continue to lift.
That's cool. Okay. I do have one more question. Before we do that, let's do I warned you ahead of time, we'll do the dad joke segment.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I know you guys are smart, but let's see if you can get this. What did the mermaid wear to math class? What did the mermaid wear to math class? This is so bad.
Can't wait to tell my kids this later, whatever it is.
I got nothing.
What did the mermaid wear to math class? An algae bra.
It's a good one.
An algae bra. I know.
A little bit of a stretch, but
I know it's a stretch. Math people will appreciate it. It is a stretch. I never claim that they're all good. They're just...
If it was good, it wouldn't be labeled as a dad joke.
Right. I always tell people, I do a dad joke every Wednesday in our team huddle. And I always tell people, I don't care whether you laugh or grimace, I've accomplished my goal. I've accomplished my goal. Okay. Let me look at my last couple of questions here. I'm going to ask both of these. What are the most important steps healthcare businesses should take to remain relevant and thrive in today's market?
I think we said care about your patients. Care about your patients, be innovative. Not do the same thing. I actually recently went to my annual primary care physician.
Oh, okay.
It was the exact same checkup that I got when I was like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
There's been no change to protocol. And I had to ask for labs to be drawn, specifically what I wanted.
Oh.
Right? And so the question is like, how innovative are they being? How many doctor's offices you still walk up and they have the little glass door that you open and the receptionist begrudgingly takes your name, tells you to sit down, and this is the same thing. This is this has been going on. I'm my mid-40s, right? This has been going on since as long as I can remember. There's been no innovation.
It's funny because in marketing we talk a lot. You've heard the term personalization, right?
Right.
There's really not much personalization.
No.
And people crave it.
There's no change. And I think what Ashley can tell you is like what the experience was 3 or 4 years ago, is not the experience you get now. It's better. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, while we have our foundations that we built our business on, we're always changing in the sense of what's the best for the customer experience, for our patient experience, and on the pulse of that. And if it's not serving us, it's not serving them, then we're going to figure out a way to do it better. So that is a point that's always in motion. While some of our foundations will never change, that achieving to be better and have a better experience, that will always be in motion and something that we strive for, and that we'll never settle on.
Yeah, I have a really good example. So one of the things, and we've gotten really good at, is really, really, truly breaking down the customer experience step by step, right? And so, the building that we're in right now, it was an old school medical building, right? It had the glass window and the staff was behind, kind of behind the wall, right? And even, and I'm just like, we've got to figure this out. This is not the way of the future, right? And we sat down and we had conversation after kind of just like nauseating almost, but then we try to be innovative because, again, the customer experience, right? The discussion that we had on the height of the chairs that they would sit at to interact with somebody who was standing, right? And being at their eye level. And the color palettes and like the openness of the space, right? The interaction that they're having with retail products that are out there, right? Like we're always fiddling with that. And so the difference, I think, for what traditional healthcare needs to do is reevaluate what that customer experience is, right? But if they don't, that's fine, because that just means more people will come to us.
Yeah, I picked up on that a long time ago in our conversation, that you guys are very passionate and care very much about the customer, the patient experience. Do you guys ever, just popped in my head, do you get feedback from your patients in terms of what you're doing, how well you're doing?
We leave out like surveys in the lobby, and we will ask for feedback, and the patient has a concern, like we track that, and it's thankfully, again, very rare, and our Google reviews and our Facebook reviews and everything is all very positive. And unfortunately, just like with anything, most consumers usually only leave a review if they've had a bad experience. And so that is very common, but that has not been the case for us. But we try to seek that and get feedback from patients by leaving up those open avenues.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do very regularly, so at any time that I'm in clinic, I just go stand out at the front. Like where the check-in and check-out is, right?
Like you're a patient.
Yeah, like just hang out, right?
Yeah.
And I may have like one of our, logoed shirt on or whatever, but I'm just standing there, just watching. And I just observe, right? And then, I'll ask somebody, right? Like, hey, do you get our email, like our marketing email, right? And they'll be like, yeah. I'm like, what do you think? Do you like it? Do you read it? Like, does it make sense?
Cool.
Is it too short? Is it too long? And guess what? People love to give an opinion. They'll tell you. Right? And I'll ask, and I'll just ask questions, right? And I'll observe, and even if I hear somebody, maybe they don't understand something that within the transaction, I'll stop the transaction and be like, hey, like, how can I make this better for you? Like, because obviously we've not done a good job of explaining something to you along the way. Otherwise, you wouldn't get to the very end and be confused. Yeah. So tell me, how can I make this better? And so the voice of the consumer, right? You can't be passive. And if you've ever taken any research statistics classes, surveys are inherently flawed, and so are reviews, okay? They just statistically, they are invalid. So I'm not a big fan of surveys. We have them if somebody feels inclined. But I think if what I do and what I would encourage other businesses to do is just, how about just go have an honest conversation with your consumer.
Real-time conversation. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
It can't be done when there's already conflict. It has to be done when, you can't do it when things are bad, like, oh, you didn't like this, why? How about you like this, why? Or, hey, do you have an opinion of anything? Tell me.
Yeah, an example of that is we were considering doing, automatically shipping a specific product, a very popular product that patients consume, just trying to save time in clinic of unpackaging, repackaging, calling patients, and what are we doing? Let's just always just ship it straight to the patient. We're like, okay, done. But Tracy was up front. He's like, can I ask you a question? Would you just like that shipped straight to your house? And the patient was like, no, I don't, because I live in an apartment. I never get my mail right, or I'm worried. I don't like things sitting on my porch. And we were like, oh, never mind. We do need to give that. We do need to give that option to the patient. Do you want to come pick it up, or do you want us to ship it? And where we all thought, oh, no brainer. Everybody's just going straight to them. One simple question to someone who happened to be there. He's like, can I ask you, what would you think? She's like, no, please do not do that. Okay.
I had a conversation yesterday with one of our patients who I know, outside of work. And I was saying, hey, we're trying to work on this idea of having our supplements available online through our website. What do you think? He goes why? I don't know why you haven't already done this. He goes, because here's what, and again, you have to break down the consumer experience. He said, it's late at night. I'm getting ready to go to bed. I just ran out of whatever this product was.
But he might not be coming to see you for a week.
Well, that or he's going to have to drive, drive 20, 25 minutes to get it. And he's like, but then by the time I wake up, I won't remember. He goes, so what do? I go on Amazon and I buy the product. And what's unfortunate is I know for a fact that the product that they buy on Amazon is not as good, doesn't work as well, and quite frankly is probably more expensive. But just because
it was convenient,
right?
Right.
So this is ultimately, and Todd, I had 100 conversations like that. And that's why, we're working with Element, 212, because we need this online retail store. Our custom, and all of that was derived out of just simply asking the question.
That's really cool. Last question. This is close to home. What final piece of advice would you give any business striving to stand out and succeed in a competitive industry? Or in your case, creating your own. I mean, you can answer it any way you want. Competitive industry, creating your own space, however you guys want to answer.
I'll let you have the last word, Ash. So I'll start. I think it's you have to answer the question is, what do you want to be? What is your brand identity? And you have to be very, very, very specific. I can't just be an automotive shop. Okay, that's not enough. That's not enough for the consumer. We live in a world where everything is very specialized.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to be an auto shop just for German import vehicles. Guess what? There's a massive market for that, and people will flock to you because of that, right? Or if you want to be a restaurant, right? You can't just, there has to be something that is appealing to the consumer, right? That they're willing to spend their dollars on you for. But it has to be different enough. And I think trying to figure out who you are, right? And then act on that. Your marketing has to speak to that, right? Your product, and most importantly, your customer experience has to be that. And part of that is telling customers no, which I know everybody hates, right? The customer's always right. Not really. I think we've shifted away from that.
I think so. I don't hear that very much anymore, very often.
The customer is, I want to build a mutual respect for the customer, right? And so that, but it has to be on my terms, right? And not being everything to everybody. Figure out who you are and what you want to be, and as soon as you do that and you put that customer first, I think it'll go.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, I think the word expert and authority is pretty predominant now. So I think people are starting to become more comfortable and accustomed to seeking out authority and expertise, and not just being like, well, I'm the customer, so I'm always right.
Right. And I think it's about a mutual respect. I respect you as my customer, and I need the same respect back.
Yeah.
That you're trusting what I have to say and my opinion on the matter.
Right.
And so I think that is building that relationship. And I think that where I can speak as, someone who owns a business, and again, it's why are you doing it? And I think it's going to be different if you're just looking to make money. I can't speak much for that, but I do think it's about having personal boundaries, to avoid burnout and to recognize your gifts and talents and the things that you are not gifted or talented in, to rely on others for that. You cannot do everything. You will get burned out, or you'll do everything mediocre. And that's just not going to work long term. So recognizing I don't want to look at numbers. I don't want to balance the books, and I don't. And guess what? I do pay someone to do that. I do pay someone to do the marketing. I do pay someone to help look and do market research and figure out what the next product is. We pay IT. I'm not going to be the facilities manager and the IT and human resources, and I'm not going to run your payroll and make sure did you want to use PTO this week. I'm not going to do that as the business owner. And so what I am going to do is have a passion for what I'm good at, and I'm going to strategically hire the right people to do that, and I'm going to hold myself accountable. I mean, I can't just check out, but and loop through that and hire the right people, invest in those people. But I am not going to pretend that I can do everything. I don't want to do everything, and I don't think that business owners that do that are serving themselves, and they're not serving their business, because you just can't. You're not. I didn't go to school to be an accountant and a CPA. I didn't go to school and learn all of these logistics. So I'm not going to pretend that I did. And so I think that you have to recognize that and step back. And it may feel like an expense, like you don't want to spend the money, but the amount of money you get back is just absolutely tenfold. And so as a business owner, you have to do that. And
yeah, I think it goes back to that idea, as I was saying, invest in the idea of the business, right?
so, yeah.
Personalized services are not very tangible, right? But anybody that's good at those things, at being an IT, that is, whether it be an accountant or somebody like me that's a little bit more broad stroke consultant, every one of those fields on paper can show you the value proposition. And if they can't, they're not the right person. The value proposition in IT is making sure that we're HIPAA compliant and that our patient security is safe and secure. We won't get sued, right? So that's an insurance policy. Accountant can show us how to save money. I can do all the things that I'm doing, right? But I don't do anything unless I can paper it onto a profit. So yeah, maybe it does feel like an expense, but actually it's actually not. It actually makes money, and your quality of life goes up exponentially. And so does mine, because she's not stressed, and also we're having high level conversations, and it just works better.
Okay.
Yeah, investing, again, like working together in a partnership with Element is a perfect example of that. And that is, you are when you look at good, better, best, you're the best option. That comes with a high expense. But as, you're going into year 5 of owning a business, recognize the value in that, where it may be more upfront, but long term it's going to be so much more in return. And being okay to make those investments in quality people, in quality partnerships is don't be cheap. Don't be cheap. Save money where it makes sense, but don't be cheap on the important stuff. And so it pays in dividends and so.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you. Well, I think in the very beginning, before we started, you asked me the question, how long would this be? I'm afraid to look.
It seems like a long one.
But that's right. So
that's all good, though.
So just to you listeners out there,
if you made it this time.
Yeah.
Well, or we might just have to break this up into 2 parts.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And I listen. I didn't. When people ask me how long will it be, I really don't know, because I don't know what we're going to talk about. We started out with operations, so we could probably have another podcast interview about the operations, right? And obviously, we talked about the state of healthcare and where you guys are filling the holes and gaps and the needs that are out there. That's another conversation. Then we talked about marketing and branding, so we covered a lot. So we took as much time as we needed. So I think we might have to break this up into 2 parts.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
This is like, you guys are a plethora of information. And Ashley, you said this is your first podcast interview. You did a great job.
Appreciate it.
You're a great speaker. You represent your brand very well, very well. So let's, before I close out, let's share some information. So if people want to learn more about you and your business. So the website is totalbodywellnessbrownsburg.com. Well, I'm assuming with the new website, you guys are going to drop the Brownsburg?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So for right now, depending when you're listening to this, totalbodywellnessbrownsburg.com. If you don't find it there, then go to totalbodywellness.com. Correct?
Yep. Either one will lead you to the other.
Yeah, right.
So
I understand. Sure. If you want to go on Facebook, put Total Body Wellness Brownsburg. And on Instagram, Total Body Wellness Brownsburg as well.
Yep.
Right? Anywhere else?
That's it.
That's it for right now.
Okay. And that's all you're doing, right? Are you the one that does the social?
I don't like physically do. Again, time. No.
I just want to make sure.
She's the
Okay.
strategist. The
Strategist.
strategist.
That's it. Not that you don't execute, right? And then, of course, both of you guys are on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Right?
And you can find, Total Body Wellness is on LinkedIn. There's not much there.
Right.
Yeah, you can find us there.
I don't think there aren't too many Tracy Fields on there, are there?
No, there's a few.
There's a few?
But there's only the important ones.
Yeah, and just for clarification, TRACY.
Correct.
Okay. Are there too many Ashley Regals on LinkedIn? Should be pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
So, ASHLEYREGAL. Cool. Well, thank you very much. This has been
Thanks for having us.
This is a good way to spend the late morning, early afternoon. This is pretty exciting. Like I said, my head's already spinning. I need to have you guys come back.
There we
There's
go.
so much to talk about. When you're the strategic director, and you have your background, there's just so much information to share. You guys have seen a lot, experienced a lot, learned a lot, do a lot. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right. Well, we'll end by I want to thank you for listening and or watching to this episode of Up in Your Family Business Podcast. Please check out some of our earlier episodes. And, of course, another one will be coming very soon. You can find us on iHeart Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website. In the meantime, may you, your family, your team, your customers, and your communities be blessed.